Hello everyone, the Nerdy Steve here, and today we will be featuring a Boros standard deck with a link to the list in the description below. I'm going to talk about the general game plan, some of the cards, and a little bit about the sideboard, and then we'll play some matches. So, let's go. So, this deck is relatively easy to understand. You are a very aggressive red-white aggro deck. You are going to play your creatures, then you're going to attack, and hopefully kill your opponent as quickly as possible. Now, on top of that, it's kind of built around, or really, you need to play with the Thundering Raiju in mind. So, Thundering Raiju is a 3/3 creature with haste. And when it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then the Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, or X is the number of modified creatures you control, other than itself. And so modified creatures have auras, equipment, or counters on them. And so a lot of the cards in this deck, with Hopeful Initiate, Kumano faces Kakkazan, Luminarch Aspirant, Bloodthirsty Adversary, and Sunrise Cavalier, have ways to distribute counters on themselves or other creatures. And so you're kind of doing your first couple of turns, hopefully building up to Thundering Raiju, where you can attack and deal a lot more damage than maybe you normally would otherwise. Because now, even before blockers, you deal 3 damage because of its triggered ability. And that's kind of how you want to play the deck, and that's why the deck is kind of good, because it can get really big very quickly, or wide very quickly. And in standard right now, there are a lot of very dirtily decks, a lot of decks that, take time to build up, or decks that when they do have creatures and stuff, they're not gonna be able to block very effectively against yours. And because a lot of your cards have haste, like Thundering Raiju, Sunrise Cavalier, and Bloodthirsty Adversary, you also have a really good late games threat. You have Roil Eruption Play with Fire to deal damage and finish your opponent out if they're at a low life total. But if your opponent's at 4 or 5 life, you can top deck, a Sunrise Cavalier or Thundering Raiju and Bloodthirsty Adversary out of nowhere and kind of kill your opponent from a relatively safe life total, right? And so we have all of that, and that's kind of how this deck works. You want to play your aggressive creatures like a turn 1 Kumano into a turn 2 Bloodthirsty Adversary, which is a 3/3 haster. And then on your following turn, if you play Sunrise Cavalier, you're attacking with a 3/3 Cavalier, a 3/3 Adversary, and a 2/2 Kumano, which is so much damage. And a lot of decks in Standard, they just cannot beat that. And so this deck is really preying on those decks that don't do anything until turn 3 or 4. And then in our sideboard, you would have, again, the usual suspects. You have Elite Spellbinder for more the control decks when they go into, heavy removal. You might need something to disrupt them. Showdown is, again, a really good card in certain matchups. It not only distributes +1/+1 counters for Thundering Raiju, but, in matchups where you think, oh, I'm going to need more cards, Showdown is where you're at. Portable Hole, removal. Mono green is one of the aggro decks in Standard that have bigger creatures than you and is also very quick. So Portable Hole is kind of for that type of matchup. And then we have Angelfire Ignition, Chandra, and Burning Hands again for mono green. But Chandra is also good in certain control matchups where you want to be able to have a consistent source of damage and or card advantage. And Angelfire Ignition is really good in maybe the more creature-based mirror matches where if you give a creature Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, and Indestructible, you're not only developing a creature that's going to be bigger than everything your opponent is, but you're probably decreasing their clock by a couple of turns by gaining a tons of life and dealing a ton of damage, right? And so that's the basic deck. and let's go play some matches. Okay, this is a little weird of a hand, but if our opponent is an aggro deck, it's good. If they're not an aggro deck, it's... Because, so what we can do is we can turn to Aspirant, and Aspirant turn 2 is a pretty good creature regardless of what our opponent is on. But if we're able to Brutal Cathar their creatures 3 turns in a row, we'll be in a very, very wonderful spot. If, you know, that isn't what happens, we will be in a, how do you say, less than wonderful spot. Okay, we have our Thundering Raiju, which is really, really good. Oh, and they're on Giada. So they're probably on White-Black Angels, which could be a little problematic. Because their creatures can get really big, and their deck has a lot of enter the battlefield abilities, so Brutal Cathar can potentially become a liability. If we ever get that far, right? Alright, we got the land. So that's good, and we still have another Brutal Cathar. But now if our opponent has removal here, they get a Righteous Valkyrie. They can play another Angel. Yeah, okay. We couldn't remove the Rafine if we wanted to because it has Ward. There's a possibility where maybe we're supposed to Luminarch Aspirant to start just adding a lot of more threats on the board, like make everything bigger. But I don't think that's what we want to do right now. I think we want to go for the removal. So, this is telling me that our opponent is trying to find something. I think. So what we're doing here is we're making it so our opponent cannot double block a single Brutal Cathar. This is really bad if they have Meat Hook. But I guess if they have Meat Hook, we're not in a good spot anyway. Like, I don't think they would have Meat Hook in their deck, but... However, what is a good thing to note, right, is if we get a land, our Thundering Raiju is lethal, and our Roil Eruption is also lethal if we untap. So... our opponent's gonna loot here, or connive. Let's not block. Easy. Now, what do we have to worry about here? They're angels. I don't know. I like Portable Hole because it gets rid of the Luminarch Aspirant and Giada and Valkyrie, right? It gets rid of a lot of things. But maybe it is better than Play with Fire. Let's think about it. If we're going to take out Play with Fire, we probably don't need the Bloodthirsty Adversary because it can't get it. And so maybe we do want this to get bigger. This is a lot of mana, though. And we're becoming a very, very high mana cost deck. So this could be bad. Also, not having a 2-drop makes Kumano faces Kakkazan much worse as well. Huh. I think maybe we're fine. We'll play around with this. Well, our opponent mulliganed. We'll mulligan too. Alright, this is fine. What we're gonna do is get rid of a Roil Eruption and kind of do the same game plan. Hello, Roil Eruption. So our opponent is stuck on lands as well. And this is a very interesting turn here, and I don't know what is or isn't right. The more counters you put on a single Luminarch Aspirant, the more vulnerable you, get to a single target removal. Like Bloodthirst, or, Whirling, whatever. But you become better against Meathook Massacre. And I guess it really, really depends what you're playing against and what you expect. And I never know what is or isn't the correct thing. But of course, the Path to Peril messed us up, and it didn't matter. Now... No, I think we try and kill the Valkyrie here. So there is a possibility we just let them they untap, and if they play an angel, they'll gain the 8 life, and we have to eat that up. And then when they attack with Valkyrie, you can use the Wandering Emperor to exile something, and then be able to untap with the Wandering Emperor during our turn. But I think we just want to make sure we don't let them gain life. There was just a lot to do. And I swear what I said made sense. Now this is a problem if our opponent has any more removal. Oh, what a good draw here. Because now Portable Hole gets rid of the token, and our opponent can't use Retribution. That was really, really good and fortunate. We may have had to consider double Roil Eruption on it. Vanishing Burst, okay. So we will Showdown, see if we get anything. We got another Showdown. That's always a little demoralizing for opponents. Maybe we should have Den of the Bugbear, but that's fine. I kind of want to hit as many lands as we possibly can. What a... You know what? That was good. That was good. I was very happy with that turn sequence. I hope you all were. Ouch. GG. Okay, we will play. No white mana, so not good. We'll get rid of Play with Fire, and we get to turn 1 Kumano into a 2/2 Luminarch Aspirant, which will become a 3/3 immediately. It exiled that, and... I mean... I think the Aspirant was a little better, but... Vanishing Burst, okay. We deal 3 to our opponent. 8. And now what do we do? Oh, wow, what a good Wandering Emperor.
This is what you get for hurting my people.
Alright, this is very, very close. But we're kind of not in a good spot, right? Our opponent has a lot of cards in hand. I don't know what creature we want them to tap out for. Okay. So we can do this. We get to Kumano next turn, right? And with Kumano out on the battlefield, any creature an opponent control that would be dealt damage by a source you control is exiled instead of dies. So our play with fire on Tenacious Underdog will kill it permanently. Assuming our opponent, I don't know. This is not great. Okay. What are they doing here? So our opponent has to block the etching to trade. Rafine. And Kaito.
Get in, get out. It's like your defenses aren't even there.
At least we have a 4/4 now that will pump up our initiate, which is great. So now both our creatures will be lethal here. They draw with Kaito.
Now this is a
And now we see what our opponent has. Wedding announcement? Okay. Ooh. Oh, but don't they die here? I mean, they're gonna die there, but we're gonna kill it anyway. And they go to -1. Okay. GG. So I think I kind of like the showdown plan here. It's a little slow. But I think they're like God, is that wrong? I feel like it's really hard for us to rely on our early aggression. But maybe we can. Like, our mana curve the higher our mana curve, the worse it is, all of our stuff is, right? So, this is good. We get to initiate turn 1. Followed by Luminarch Aspirant. I actually think... God. What do we want to do here? Do we make them trade? So the thing is, right, if they trade, they take one here, and this is at least a 2/3. And then future Cavaliers still pump it up. Okay. Well... Luminarch Aspirant's a good card, everyone. Oh, okay. I think I'll gladly do that. Having to only worry about one is really good. It's still day. Another interesting thing about this deck is in a lot of decks with Brutal Cathar, it is your only night-day card. But because we also have Sunrise Cavalier, it means night and day will start changing sooner, and that makes it a little less... That makes Brutal Cathar a little less as a reliable way to exile stuff your opponent is doing. So it is something to keep in mind. Now our opponent's at 5. Which means they kind of need removal for the Raiju, which could be in the form of Wandering Emperor. Then we also have Cavalier and a Kumano coming in.
You are not much of a roadblock.
I mean, obviously not ideal, but... And interesting that they're choosing that and not the Aspirant. Alright, it's still day. So let's exile the Aspirant. Do we want to get rid of the Wandering Emperor, so no 2/2? I don't know. We could have brought them to 4. Soren, okay.
No you fight for me now.
If they block here, they take lethal, because they'll take 3, 6, 9, go up to 9 from the lifelink. A big meat hook would not be great.
Let this be over. I bring my own.
Amiria's Call. If we do this, though, right? We're still fine yet. GG. Thank you for watching me play some Boros Aggro in Standard. The deck was actually very surprisingly good. It was very, very quick, very, very consistent, and very to the point. I did not expect it to be this good, honestly. And I had... Not only was it a blast playing... Again, just because the deck is aggressive does not mean there are important decisions to make. And I talked about it briefly too, but whenever you have Luminarch Aspirant, this card is so powerful. But in an environment where Meat Hook Massacre is a thing, how you distribute your +1/+1 counters has a lot of very, very big consequences down the line and in each game. And a lot of times when I lose, or even when you win, you're like, maybe I could have targeted something else with Luminarch Aspirant to deal more damage, or to make my creature maybe pressure my opponent more in combat and survive a double block or a triple block. Luminarch Aspirant also, again, with Hopeful Initiate. If you Hopeful Initiate on turn 1 and then you Luminarch Aspirant on turn 2, what you target with the Aspirant can... There are arguments to be made for both, and I don't ever really know what is right or isn't. And that's part of the fun with playing a deck like this. Like, even with... And not even just how you target, like, thinking about your turns from turn 1 can be very, very game-changing. If you go, okay, I have a Kumano in play, or in my opening hand, but I don't have a 2-drop, do you play the Kumano on turn 1? Even though you're not going to get anything out of the stage 2 of the saga. And the answer is probably yes, 95% of the time, but it's not always that simple. And I think decks like this, aggro decks tend to like have the stereotype of being very easy and simple to play. And I think that is doing a disservice to the deck and also to you as a player, because there is a lot of agency and a lot of decisions, and there's a lot of ways to mulligan to get a better hand that maps out into the play pattern you want and everything. So this deck really, really made me think about that, and so I would suggest doing it because I think it's really, really good and really, really fun, because who doesn't like killing your opponent out of nowhere? And so, with that, if you like what you watch, you should totally comment or subscribe to this channel. I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/thenerdysteve many, many days of the week. And watching me live is always great. But with that, I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. Bye.